Hi, Karim. Thanks for taking the time out for an interview with us today.
Thanks, Johnny, and thanks for having me.
Yeah. Um, Tell us a little bit about Claim. How did you start this company? Where did you get the ideas from?
Look, the idea really come from identifying a problem. My partner used to be in the medical field, helping healthcare providers hassle with their medical claims and insurance companies. And when I saw that, I just put my finance hat and realized basically we can help, you know, unlock liquidity from these healthcare providers by buying their medical claims. So that's how it all started.
Right. And I mean, you've only been going really for 9 months or so, as a company at least. And of course, you had the idea before. And you've been going for about 9 months. You participated in the Techstars program. How has that helped you on your journey?
Look, when we started the Techstar program, we were not even incorporated. We were the last one to receive Techstars money.
Right.
I remember the status was red out of all the companies because we were the last one. And by the end of the program, 3 months after, we were the first one to have completed our seed round. So we truly got accelerated during this space. Techstar is a great program, give us like the stamp and the credibility that help us, get to where we are today.
And what are the key challenges you've seen as a startup?
In our space, the insurance space has certain regulatory issues that we need to overcome, and also on the finance space as well, there has some regulatory issues that we need to overcome. So being in between finance and insurance and healthcare, three heavily regulated industries, make it quite challenging to basically be able to bridge the gap.
Mm-hmm. And one of the topics that we discussed yesterday at the panel discussion at CMIF Middle East was the access to venture capital at the different stages in a startup's life cycle. What's your view on the access to funding in the region?
It is usually difficult to get venture capital for equity financing. We were extremely lucky because we managed to raise, oversubscribed twice the rounds, and I think people see something innovative in what we do, and that's why we are lucky. But when you look, for instance, at the debt side, the venture debt side, it's challenging. Our business is limited by the size of our balance sheet. So this is where we are focusing right now. We're also working very closely with potential banks to be able to have that balance sheet and help us grow.
And in terms of the investor base, are you primarily looking for funding locally, regionally, or are you at some point going to look at international investors as well?
Usually at this stage, we, startups, and also it was our case, we tend to have funding locally. And for early stage companies, pre-seed, seed, Series A, usually funding is available. It becomes a bit more tricky when you reach Series B, Series C, right, because the investors are diminishing, and you need to start seeking international investors. And to seek international investors, you need to have international plans. So I think this is where the challenge is. When you reach the Series B, C, you need to be able to have this. And you can see recently, for instance, Uniphonic raised $125 million. They got funding from SoftBank. So it's an example of an international fund investing in local champions. But with the clear idea that there is an international expansion behind it.
What are some of the challenges being a startup in this region?
I think the main challenge, there are many, of course. One is regulatory. Second is perhaps opening something as simple as a bank account. Mm-hmm. It could be cumbersome.
What is it that is difficult with that?
I had two experiences. The first one is through Techstar. They have, for instance, a partnership with one of the leading banks, and there it was not very difficult for us to obtain a bank account. But funny enough, we opened the bank account in the US for a company in the UAE much faster than we opened a bank account of a UAE company.
Why do you think that is?
I think that the banks are very cautious because of strict regulation from the central bank related to money laundering. And I think that's where the problem is. So they are very, very cautious and they do extra due diligence, whether it is for a tiny business or a very big business. I think the compliance teams are not adapting necessarily their checks to the size of the business and the riskiness of the business.
You have all these different options in terms of which country to set up, which free zone to set up in. You have different regulators. You have some of the challenges that you mentioned. I mean, how do you navigate this as a small business?
It's tough. It's tough, but it's part of the game. Otherwise, look, I look at it like a puzzle that we need to assemble. So we know it's challenging. You just need to look at the right pieces to assemble them and be a little bit lucky as well. So, but it's an art, and it requires perseverance, determination, and luck.
How can you use risk, compliance, and governance as a competitive advantage as opposed to simply bureaucracy?
Um, I think it's something that people look at the beginning. Let's say clients, or if we deal with the government, or if we deal with banks, for instance, they are asking us for a series of things that we need to comply. So it could be a show. It's not just like bureaucracy. I think it could be a business showstopper in our line of business. So it's as important as a finance function. It's as important as a sales function. Because without compliance risks, we cannot operate.
As you're progressing to Series A fundraising, what will the role of risk and compliance and governance play in that process? How will it change?
Look, we have incorporated two entities in ADGM. We believe that one of them needs to be upgraded to either advisory license or fund management license. And by regulation, you need to have a compliance and risk officer. So we have no choice but to structure a department that's going to look after these things. So I think, that's the plan. I don't think it's necessarily a Series A. I think the moment we have to upgrade, we prepare our business plan. These things need to be there, and subject to us obtaining the license, these functions need to be in place.
How have you prepared for that involvement of your business model, where you need to put in place sort of formal risk functions within the business?
So now what we started doing is we've hired a compliance company to tell us basically what sort of license is needed. And then they will probably also help us, prepare the documentation for the license. And within that, we will see what are the requirements for risks and compliance, and then we'll try to fulfill those requirements because it's fairly regulated and fairly explicit.
Claim has been a client of our consultancy since day one, pretty much. How did that relationship come about from your perspective, and what do you see our role in claims development?
Look, in our business, risk is very important. I did not come across companies that do risk consultancy. So for us, it's very beneficial because we want to make sure that we are doing the right things, not only from a regulatory standpoint. As I told you, there are like 3 different regulations that we could potentially fall under. So we want to make sure that we are cautious with that. And with any fintech/financial services company, compliance and regulation and risk is very important. It's so far we've had a great partnership, and we believe that we're going to be able to do more.
Thanks for sharing your knowledge and experience with us, telling us a little bit more about Claim. We're excited to follow you on your journey.
Thank you. I
Thanks.
appreciate it. Thanks for everything. Bye.